just about test the audio. I don't know. I don't know if we are on now. I don't know if we are on now. There we are. Okay, that's good. That's good. Yeah. Anyways, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Football Tribe VG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back. Like I was saying, for those of you that are regulars, you may have noticed for the last fortnight or so, you're cooking eggs and you need to be away for 25 minutes because you're cooking eggs. Come on, LFC. ah, I'm wondering what your cooking skills are like. But anyways, it's all good. Wish you the very best in your duties in the kitchen. I know you're on kitchen duty and you do not want to get that food burned. Yeah, prepare for the family. Prepare for the family. Anyways, it's all good. It's all good, LFC. Um, like I was saying, for those of you that are regulars, you may have noticed that for the last fortnight, we have been coming at around 9 p.m. East African time on Fridays for our Friday night broadcasts. Yes, that's a change or a shift in our time. It's a shift in our arrangements so that we get to serve you better. Predominantly because of the previews that we get to do usually on Fridays and things like that. And then also another sort of engagements that I need to get to that have seemed to sort of have fallen along the way. So allow me always do this at this time. So tonight we will be speaking about who is the best midfielder in the English Premier League. It's a debate that I thought we should entertain. After 7 games played, there's a lot of names that could come to mind. But who is the best midfielder in the Premier League at the moment? Maybe allow me be a little more specific. I'll go ahead and say who is the best, maybe sort of defensive midfielder in the Premier League. Because if I dare leave it that open, then we may get things mixed with the attacking midfielders or the creative midfielders, the false nines and stuff, and then the wingers who could be dubbed as midfielders and things like that. So, for example, we may end up speaking about players like Ebelechi Eze. And yet that in itself is not the gist of the debate. So the question that we do pose this evening is who is the best midfielder in the Premier League? Perhaps I should say who is the best central midfielder? Yes, central midfielder in the Premier League. And by central midfielder, I mean either of these two guys, a number 6 or a number 8. Because those two tend to play more or less the same roles, depending on how they are deployed or depending on one's natural talent. Some have the ability to strike a chord between both. Oh, apologies. Something has happened that I need to try and correct. Something that has just happened that I need to correct. Apologies. While I correct this. Apologies while I correct this. Yes. Like I was saying, that we need to differentiate between those two so that people do not get lost in the mix of the debate of it all. Because sometimes um, when you talk about midfielders, it's easy to it's it's easy to lose the debate uh, if you do include if you do include if you go ahead and include creative midfielders, in that sense. Apologies, guys. I'm trying to test something. Yes, I was testing the quality of our audio on a different device to make sure everything is okay. But I think we are good to go. I think we are perfect on that front. Anyways, yes, like I was saying, uh, I put the question to you: who is the best midfielder in the English Premier League at the moment? And by that I mean the central midfielder. There are people that have been really, really impressed by so far this season, and perhaps that's where we should start from. In no particular order, we will go through some of the names that I think are stand out in my personal opinion, and allow me start with a name that perhaps many of you did not suspect, that many of you perhaps did not see coming, is João Paulinho. I think he so far scored 2 Premier League goals for Tottenham Hotspurs. One of his goals coming as, I think, an equalizer in their 2-all draw against Brighton and Hove Albion, while the other goal, no, actually, he scored an equalizer against Wolverhampton Wanderers in a 1-all draw, and then the other goal he scored against Manchester City. So, I mean, for a player who is returning to the Premier League after what would pass for a bit of a difficult spell that's in the German Bundesliga, having joined Bayern Munich, and things did not really work out for him. He gets to return to the Premier League and has an immediate impact in that Tottenham Hotspur side. And I remember when they were signing him, or at the time of his signing, I seem to remember mentioning this, that I thought he was a very, very good addition in terms of being the holding midfielder, because somehow, somewhere, what's his name? Juvis Bissouma had sort of fallen off, had not progressed the way you would have hoped for him to do so, the way you would have hoped for him to do so, in terms of, advancing, in terms of being the better player or an improved player compared to the player that Tottenham Hotspurs signed from Brighton and Hove Albion a couple of seasons ago. So you look at that and think to yourself, that's what's really happened for him. Of course, in between there are coming a couple of injuries. Sometimes he's been left on the bench. He's been sacrificed, and the likes of Lucas Bagville getting ahead of him, Rodrigo Bentancur playing in that Tottenham midfield ahead of him. But for a 30-year-old returning to the Premier League, 7 games played, 2 goals scored, that has been really, really impressive. For everything Tottenham have done right so far this season, he's been an integral part to that. Yes, they've not had the perfect record in as far as winning all their games in the Premier League is concerned, but that notwithstanding, I think he's been a very, very brilliant player. We know that he was at Fulham for, I think, about 2 seasons before leaving for Bayern Munich in 2024. I think, yes, in 2024, where he spent just 1 season, and then he's been loaned to Tottenham Hotspurs. The Tottenham Hotspurs will have an option to buy should they desire to make the move permanent. But I thought Lucas Paulinho has been one of those really, really, really impressive holding midfielders in as far as this campaign is concerned. Then secondly, okay, before I even step away, because we're talking about the Tottenham Hotspur side who are one under a new manager in Thomas Frank, who needs to prove himself at a slightly higher level or at an elevated level in comparison to where he was last season. For the previous 4 seasons, in as far as the Premier League is concerned, had been in charge of Brentford. So now him moving to Tottenham Hotspur on the back of them winning the UEFA Europa League title and themselves a promotion or a qualification to the UEFA Champions League, and then knowing that we're talking about a team which in 2019 was playing at the finals of the UEFA Champions League under the charges of Mauricio Pochettino, in between which they've had managers for whom you would argue things have not really been gone down well for them. In Jose Mourinho, in Carlo Ancelotti, in Ange Postecoglou, while Ange Postecoglou managed to win them that UEFA Europa League title, beating Manchester United in the final by a goal to nil. You could argue that on the larger, in the grand scheme of things, that his success was is one that you could argue for both sides. In other words, he gave and took away in the same spirit. He brought a title, their first major title in 17 years, and then he also guided them to their lowest Premier League finish in as many years, because they finished 17th of the Premier League log, losing as many as 22 games. That's why when Danny Levy, the then Tottenham Hotspur chairman, and his board sat, and they assessed how their season had gone, that was the 2024-2025 Premier League season, they decided that while he had helped them win a very precious piece of silverware, they had to let him go, Ange Postecoglou. And now you have Thomas Frank, who steps up to say, I think I'm ready for the next stage. I'm ready to take this team forward. I'm ready for a new challenge, and he takes on the new challenge. So far, so good, because when you look at the Premier League standings, they're third on the Premier League table after 7 games played, 4 victories, 2 draws, and only 1 loss. So I do not think that, in all fairness, that's a bad record. I think it's been a very brilliant start to the season for Tottenham Hotspur. The only disappointment being that loss is that it came at their own home turf against AFC Bournemouth. I think that was on match day 3, just on the back of them beating up against Manchester City by 2-0. So it came against an unlikely opponent, or an unlikely team that on a given day you think you'd fancy. Tottenham Hotspur, if they are big as they assume themselves to be, should be able to go ahead and win. So in that sort of context, then quickly, away from Joao Paulinho. So allow me, I think, grade these guys perhaps in order, after in my order of preference, after we have assessed them bit by bit. So in second place, okay, not in second place, but next, I will speak about Martin Zubimendi. Now, Arsenal's Martin Zubimendi, the reason as to why I get to speak about him is we all know he's new to the Premier League. He's just come from Spain. He's been playing at Real Sociedad, a much smaller team in comparison to Arsenal. So when you look at it in that sort of context, you have to appreciate it, how easily he's sort of fitted into this Arsenal system and adapted well to how they play, but also to the Premier League as well. I thought him coming to the Premier League, if I had any reservation, was about how he would physically compete with some of the biggest bullies within the Premier League. Now, but if you come to the Premier League and you featured in 7 games, as he has done, and in those games, you played away to Manchester United at Old Trafford, you played away to Liverpool at Anfield, you played at home against Manchester City, you played away to Newcastle at St. James's Park. I think that's a fair weighing scale for us to say you're good enough to fit in this league. You're good enough to compete physically. You're good enough to compete mentally, and with all the other skills that, of course, he does come with. He seems quite not the fastest of players, but he knows where to be at the right time. He's so far equally scored 2 goals, 2 brilliant goals against Nottingham Forest in Arsenal's 3-0 victory. One from outside the box during that, as Nottingham Forest tried to defend a set piece or a corner kick, and then the other was a floated ball to him that he heads home. Again, not the tallest of players on the pitch. In any case, could pass for the shortest player that Arsenal may be having. Possibly around 5'7", around there. and yet he headed that ball, into the back of the net. So I think the way you look at his overall involvement, his football intelligence. When you look at Arsenal's victory over the weekend against West Ham United by 2 goals to 0. He was involved in both goals. He does provide the pre-assist leading to Declan Rice's goal, because he provides that ball, I think, to, was it Bukayo Saka, who takes an aim at goal, and then it's deflected, and of course it's I think it was Urian Timber. Yes, Urian Timber. Yes, it was Urian Timber. So he fires at goal, ball is defended, deflected in the path of Declan Rice, and then he scores. Then in the second half, it was his brilliant overhead pass to find Urian Timber before he's fouled by Diouf, I think Malik Diouf, that for which Arsenal get a penalty for that foul, and then Bukayo Saka steps up to score. So I mean, he's been really, really brilliant, in my opinion. If Arsenal were to sit down and assess who has been their best player of the season so far in the opening 7 games of the Premier League or across all competitions, I would say that he should be up right there within the top 3. I think he will be struck. He will be fighting for that slot alongside Ricardo Carafiori and Urian Timber, maybe. So he's been really, really impressive. Then the other player that I would want to go with is Moises Caicedo. Moises Caicedo of Chelsea is become that player. For everything Chelsea do right, Moises Caicedo is bound to be in the thick and thin of it. He's going to be at the best of it all. For those of you that again watched Liverpool lose to Chelsea over the weekend in that 2-1 defeat to the reigning champions, you must have appreciated how Moises Caicedo applied himself, not for just scoring that brilliant or stunning strike from outside the area, but he also forced Georgi Mamadashvili into another brilliant save. I thought he was all over that pitch. He led well in that midfield, how they went forward. He was integral. I mean, he was getting himself within those sort of outside the area zonal spaces that Enzo Fernandez normally occupies. As Enzo Fernandez look to drift further to the right wing, or further to the left wing in most of their progressive attacks. Moises Caicedo came in to sort of fill that bit of belt that you'd ordinarily have Enzo Fernandez or Cole Palmer fill. So I mean, he's very, very industrious. He's a very, very critical player at what Chelsea do. And we know, yes, they've only registered 3 victories and 2 draws and 2 losses so far in the Premier League. Not the best of stats to Chelsea's preference, not what they would have loved to have in terms of a start. But I think he's been really, really, really important to how they play in that midfield. Of course, he has cemented that role as Chelsea's go-to deploying central midfielder, even in the presence of the likes of Dario Esogo, even in the presence of Romeo Lavia, who, unfortunately for him, more often than not, he's out injured. But at least we got to see him come on as a second-half substitute in that game against Liverpool. Then also, the other credit I want to give to him is that regardless of which partner he's been commanded to play alongside with, for example, in that game against Liverpool, in that midfield, he starts alongside Richard James with Enzo Fernandez playing slightly forward in the absence of Cole Palmer. Sometimes he's played alongside Romeo Lavia. So between him, Romeo Lavia, and Enzo Fernandez had formulated a very good partnership that was really, really solid. Unfortunately for them, that very, very partnership was sort of hampered, or its growth was hampered by the continuous injuries of Romeo Lavia. But I think he's a very, very brilliant player. Sometimes he's been given to play alongside Andre Santos. On another occasion, I think it's been Dario Esogo and things like that. But he remains a very, very solid player within that, central midfield from Chelsea. Now, all the flowers that we heap on Moises Caicedo, and not to take away any credit from Enzo Fernandez, because I think Enzo Fernandez is right up there amongst the best midfielders in the Premier League. He's sort of gone in that role. He he's had to. It took him a bit of time to settle in, having joined Chelsea from Benfica in the aftermath of the FIFA World Cup in 2022, joining in January 2023. It took him a bit of time to settle in. And as we saw last season, he did not have the best starts to the season, but he grew into the season and became a very, very effective player and very, very impactful player in as far as everything Chelsea did when it came to finishing in that fourth place, when it came to winning the UEFA Conference League, when it came to winning the FIFA Club World Cup in the summer. So I would add Enzo Fernandez to that list because I think he's been really, really brilliant in that Chelsea jersey. Now, away from that, I would also want to go to Newcastle and pick up on Sandro Tonali. Sandro Tonali, I mean, in the composition of their midfield three that has Bruno Guimaraes, Sandro Tonali, and Joelinton, I think arguably that's one of the best best midfield trios you will find in the Premier League. They played that partnership for quite some time. I think for 2 full years, possibly. Yeah, I think 2 full years. Of course, what would have been possibly the third year, or maybe, is it Sandro Tonali was banned. You remember he had the ban for about 6 months or so for being found in breach of the anti-betting rules. So, but all that notwithstanding, for the time he's played in that midfield, alongside Joelinton and Bruno Guimaraes, he's been a very, very standout player. Of course, pops up in the right places sometimes to score you a goal and things like that. But he gets to do the donkey work of carrying that ball forward and things like that. Now, usually, up against good teams, very seldom will you easily pick on who has been the better player on the pitch out of those three, because they complement each other so well that you may struggle to choose who has been your best player. When it comes to physicality, Joelinton and Bruno Guimaraes will give it their all. When it comes to a bit of flair, Sandro Tonali then comes in. When it comes into, sometimes popping up with the goal, they all can pop up with the goal. We saw that from Bruno Guimaraes over their last victory when they beat up against Nottingham Forest by 2-0. Never mind that it was a foul in the build-up to that very goal, a foul on, I think, Morgan Gibbs-White in the build-up to that very goal. So that notwithstanding, I think they complement each other so well that oftentimes you come out of the game and you're thinking to yourself, who has been the best midfielder in that Newcastle team? You remember in the 2-1 loss against Arsenal, I think it was after the withdrawal of Joelinton that defensively Newcastle started to suffer a bit. So when it comes to his physicality, his bullish nature, he's right up there amongst those guys. Bruno Guimaraes among the same. So I think that midfield trio, I would bring it to that list. I would bring it into that list because seldom does Sandro Tonali stand out as an attacking midfielder in the sense of being in the mold of Martin Odegaard, in the sense of being in the mold of Ebelechi Eze, in the sense of being in the mold of James Maddison or Morgan Gibbs-White or Cole Palmer. In that sense, he's not in that sense. So he is more of an 8, the same way you see Enzo Fernandez. Nonetheless, they can all be deployed as 10s because of their natural talent in that sense. So I think those three will come on my list for some of the best midfielders in the Premier League. Then the other player I want to throw into that mix, and for this one, I bring him with reservations. Not reservations based on his talents, but reservations based on his recent form. And that's Rodrigo Cascante. We're talking about the Ballon d'Or winner. I mean, a fully fit Rodrigo, I think, could possibly be better than all these are names that we've enlisted. However, ever since bouncing back from that anterior cruciate ligament injury that he did suffer sometime in September, I think it was September 22nd, 2024, in their 2-all draw against Arsenal at the Etihad Stadium, he sort of struggled to find full fitness because he suffered a couple of setbacks here and there, including being withdrawn over the weekend in their 1-0 victory against Brentford. Brought Erling Haaland, of course, scoring that game, but he had to be withdrawn early, and they brought on Nico Gonzalez. Now, that again notwithstanding, I say this without fear of contradiction that I think he is the best holding midfielder in the Premier League if he's fully fit. The way he makes that Manchester City midfield tick, going forward, defending, doing the, winning the ball back, doing the hard tackles when it needs to be, clipping on opponents, and deciding to dictate the tempo of the game, the flow of the game, and things like that. Again, he too, like some of the names we've mentioned previously, he does pop up sometimes in the right areas and scores you a brilliant goal. You remember he scored that goal in the UEFA Champions League final as they beat up against Inter Milan by a goal to nil in 2023. Yes, in the 2023 UEFA Champions League final, after which he went on to win the Euros 2024 with Spain. Of course, I think he missed out on the final through injury, and then Martin Zubimendi came in, who did really, really brilliantly well. But I think, was he player of the tournament? And he ended up winning the Ballon d'Or that year, 2024. So really, a very, very impressive player in Rodrigo Cascante, in as far as the Premier League is concerned. Then, the other player, in terms of the holding midfielder, that I want to pick up on is Declan Rice, Arsenal's Declan Rice. He joins the club in the summer of 2023, well knowing, or at least best known to most of us, that he can play as a centre back, but he's a holding midfielder, 1-1, a number 6, a guy that's, I don't know if he has 3 lungs, really, because sometimes he runs his socks off. He runs across that entire pitch, box to box, doing the donkey's work, and you can't help it wonder, does he tire? Usually, he looks tired, by the way, especially when you try to read his face, when he goes to take a set piece, usually a corner kick, or when he's standing at the free kick. There's that sort of deep breath that he takes, and you look at him and you're thinking to yourself, this guy looks tired. And yet, in the next minute, he's going to sprint across that entire turf, and you're thinking to yourself, he's really a workhorse, he's really, really a workhorse. So, for me, Declan Rice is, again, arguably one of the very best that there is in the Premier League. Because, like I said, he can play number 6, he can play number 8. It depends on how he's deployed in a particular game. He was speaking recently, and he did say that he's been given more freedom to roam around the pitch by Mikel Arteta. And, because, the way Mikel Arteta set up, and you have to go back to, I think, last season, when he plays him alongside Thomas Partey and, of course, Martin Odegaard in what appears to be a double pivot, but him playing as the number 8. Of course, he gets the freedom to go, back and forth as the box-to-box midfielder for the team. But then how he's deployed is essentially to help Arsenal win the ball back easily within those high areas, well knowing that they are also covered in the deep lying role of the midfield. And then usually you have one of the left backs, you have the Arsenal left back or the right back, depending on the opponent or on how they've been deployed on the given day, inverting into midfield to help whichever the number 6 is, whether it was Thomas Partey this time around, whether it's Martin Zubimendi, and predominantly that role has been played by Ricardo Carafiori during the course of this season. Away to Newcastle, that role seemed to be played more by Uran Timber, particularly when you look at phases in the first half. That's why Christian Mosquera was constantly being caught out of position in that first half, and then he ended up being withdrawn for William Saliba going into the second half. So, but Declan Rice, I mean, he's that kind of guy. He's going to pop up. He's going to float in a very, very good set piece, usually a corner kick or a free kick. Of course, he doesn't score so many free kicks. You have to go back last season when he scores those double free kicks against Real Madrid. That's where he gets a majority of his, credit from. But again, all that notwithstanding, you got to appreciate him that when he goes into floating that corner kick, he knows he's really, really well drilled in whipping that ball up. Again, he said, while speaking recently in one of his interviews, he did say he didn't know he had it in him, and yet his coaches at Arsenal saw that in him and told him, "Look, you're going to, start taking these set pieces." And the more he's taken them, the more he's grown the confidence and sort of the charisma and the the confidence and the charisma to take them, but also he's improved on his art of whipping that ball, of slicing it. When you look at, again, allow me to reflect back on this, but when you look back at those two free kicks that he scores against Real Madrid, oh my God, for example, the first ball, he bends the first free kick, he bends that ball around the wall of the Real Madrid players and curves it to the near post to beat Thibaut Courtois. Then for the second free kick, he dips it or he carries it over the wall, and they're just incredible strikes. They're just incredible strikes. But speaking about this Premier League season alone, I think he's been really, really a brilliant servant in that Arsenal midfield for now. So you can see that we do have collapse. Hi, Shumail. Hi, how are you? Victor Fat Grocery is out. Why are you saying that? Why are you saying that? Anyways, Shumail, Merino is the GOAT. Okay, that's your opinion. Shumail, who do you think is the best holding midfielder or the best central midfielder in as far as the Premier League is concerned at the moment? We are talking about the who you predominantly call the number 6 or the number 8. One of those two. Who do you think at the moment is the best midfielder in the Premier League? Or at least give me your top 3 in by order, according to your opinion. He doesn't even score, but he has so far scored 3 goals, 2 against Leeds, and then the other against what? Was it against Nottingham? Yes, I think against Nottingham Forest. So yeah, he hasn't scored as many, but having scored 3 goals in the opening 7 games, for which you played, I think you played against 3 of the top 4 teams. No, is it 3 or 2? 2. You played Man City, you played Liverpool, you played away to Newcastle, who finished 5th. You played away to Old Trafford. So I think he's been good. You say Semenyo is very good. Yeah, Semenyo is very good, but I'm not talking about wingers. I'm not talking about attacking midfielders. Anyway, you are absent for the at the start of this debate. I wanted us to separate because if we bring in attacking midfielders and wingers and false nines, we may sort of lose the debate in a way. So I want us to look at central midfielders, those that are predominantly called defensive midfielders, and that's usually the number 6 and the number 8, because the number 8 traditionally he does both of the roles. He does the 50%, kind of defensive work and 50% offensive work, while the number 6 does the defensive work predominantly in that sort of sense. So far, my mentions have been in no particular order, because I'll give my order at the end of this, broadcast. But so far, I've talked about Joao Paulinho from Tottenham Hotspur. I think he's been a very, very brilliant holding central midfielder this season. I've talked about Martin Zubimendi, how well he's adapted himself to the Premier League. Hi, Czech, long time indeed. How are you doing? It's been a while. You disappeared, but I hope you're doing good. I think our colleague Czech from Kenya. I've talked about Moises Caicedo. I've talked about Enzo Fernandez. I've talked about Sandro Tonali from Newcastle. But also, in addition to Sandro Tonali, I gave honorable mentions to Bruno Guimaraes and Joelinton, because those 3 sort of fit so well together in that Newcastle midfield that sometimes you come out of game and you wonder who their best midfielder was, just because they all did their respective duties just brilliantly. So yeah, so check. Equally, I know you're a Chelsea fan, but without bias whatsoever, bring the objectives, bring the objective self of you to give us who you think is the best central midfielder as far as the Premier League is concerned so far this season. I know it's only been 7 games, but I think 7 games is a good, we can give a good measure for consistency purposes to know who the best midfielder is at the moment. So the other mention that I did mention was Rodrigo Cascante or Lodri from Manchester City. Yes, he's not at the best of form. That pretty much we know because he suffered sort of setback after setback, having recovered from that anterior cruciate ligament injury. But I thought he deserved a mention in all this. Then we've just been speaking about Declan Rice at Arsenal among those. So far we've had that's seven, about 9 mentions of midfielders. Check says, I'm cool. I've been kind of busy, but soon we will start. We will start podcast and analysis, bro. Okay. Whenever you're ready, we'll be ready to engage. So still, I was scanning around to find some of the who else has been a standout as central midfielder in as far as the Premier League is concerned. Um, Not easy, not easy finding the very best because when you're talking about the very best, you need to pick out standout players. I wanted to go to Liverpool, but okay, no buts. At Liverpool, I'm going to pick Dominic Soboslai. Now, Dominic Soboslai, I know this season, he's a kind of player that has been played in multiple roles. He's been played as a right back, been played as a number 8, number 6, more advanced, as a 10. He's played it all. And I think he deserves to be on this list of the best central midfielders. He's so dynamic. He's so agile. Of course, he's popped up with 3 points for Liverpool in that 1-0 victory against Arsenal when he scored that brilliant free kick, I think in about the 83rd minute of that game. That was literally destined for a goalless draw from the look of things in the grand scheme of things. But he popped up with a very, very brilliant take and he scored from the spot kick. But from the penalty, from the free kick, quite from distance. And I think overall, he's a very, very brilliant player. Yes, Liverpool have had their own dip in form, or they've suffered their blip, losing 3 games on the spin against Olympiacos in the UEFA Champions League by goal to nil, 2-1 against Crystal Palace in the Premier League, and more recently by a similar score against Chelsea in the Premier League. So, but all that notwithstanding, I think he's been that constantly shining candle within that Liverpool side that has sort of conceded one too many in some of the games that they played, because they conceded 2 against Bournemouth, conceded 2 against Newcastle, conceded 2 against Atletico de Madrid. Yes, they managed to win, but still conceded 2 against Crystal Palace, 2 against Chelsea. So yeah, but in that sort of assessment, then so Dominic Soboslai, for me, I really, really rate him high. Now, some people are going to be wondering, why is Ryan Gravenberch not in this cohort? We're talking about the best central midfielders so far in the Premier League this season, particularly this season. No mention of what happened last season. In terms, as in, it's not a factor. We can't talk about it in the context of the analysis, but it's out of consideration, in how they've applied themselves so far this season. So I think Ryan Gravenberch, yes, he had a brilliant game against Everton. He scored 1 and provided the other, but yeah, he's not been a standout performer. You say for me, in terms of midfielders, I would go Caicedo, Vitinha. Okay, I need to. You say you go Caicedo number 1, Vitinha number 2, Pedri number 3, Rice number 4, and Gravenberch and Fabian. Now, check you've okay. Thank you so much for the comment, for giving us your top 6. You say Fabian. Fabian Ruiz, I think you mean. So you've expanded the debate to take it to a European kind of level. However, our debate, for purposes of this particular broadcast or context, is about the Premier League. But nonetheless, you've still given us who you think are the best midfielders in the Premier League. And based on this list, you've gone with Caicedo, you've gone with Rice in number 2, you've gone with Gravenberch in number 3. So for the top 2, I do not disagree with you. Gravenberch, particularly this season, has not yet stood out. Besides that brilliant performance against Everton, all the other games he's been average, and we know he did not start the season. So yeah, that's my view on that side. But thank you so much for your input to the debate in that regard. Of course, when you take it to the European context, yeah, Vitinha for me is a standout player. A fully fit Joao Neves would be again part of that. Fabian Ruiz again in number 8. Who has been played as a 10, of course, because of their system in that sort of sense, depending on how you interpret it. Pedri, without a doubt, arguably one of the very best that there is. I don't know. I think I'll go Vitinha, Pedri, Rice, Caicedo, if we were to go to the whole of Europe, in terms of the best leagues, or the top 5 leagues, in that sort of sense. Maybe, just maybe. Of course, one would have to take maybe a trip to. You also add, you say Premier League, you'd go Caicedo, Rice, Gravenberch, Tonali, Zubimendi, and Enzo. At least all the names you mentioned are part of the names that I've mentioned in this analysis. It's good to see that we are at least on the same page. We may not be on the same page in terms of the rankings, who is top, who is second or third, but at least you sort of have the right names. So for me, the outlier in that one, or who I would omit from your list, would be Gravenberch, because, like I said, this particular context looks at the Premier League so far this season, bearing in mind that Zubimendi is new to the Premier League, bearing in mind that Joao Paulinho, who I've already mentioned in this podcast, at Tottenham Hotspur, only just returned from the German Bundesliga on a season-long loan at Tottenham Hotspur. So, excuse me, in that sort of context. But yeah, a very, very good submission that you put forward for the shout-outs for those respective names. Again, I'm trying to look around in my head, trying to squeeze my mind to see any other standout player. Again, in the opening 7 games of the season, I'm inclined to go to Crystal Palace and pick on Adam Wharton. Now, Adam Wharton is a very, very exciting talent in that midfield at Crystal Palace. Usually playing alongside Taichi Kamada. I think he's a very, very exciting player. A very, very exciting talent to look at. He's been linked with the potential moves to some of the giants of Europe. Barcelona, Real Madrid, Liverpool, Manchester United. And I was thinking during the course of the summer that when Manchester United tried to sign Carlos Baleba from Brighton and Hove Albion, of course, if we are speaking in the grand scheme of things, reflecting back to last season as well, then Carlos Baleba would pass to be part in this cohort. But for me, he's not part of it at the moment because while he's a very, very good central midfielder, we are yet to see the best of him this season. I thought to myself, when Manchester United failed to get Carlos Baleba from Brighton and Hove Albion because Brighton chose not to sell, I was thinking to myself, why not try and probe Crystal Palace for Adam Wharton? I mean, he's that brilliant. He is that brilliant in that a central midfield. Unfortunately, Czech says I need to leave. I need to leave you now. We will talk later. I'm doing some edits about Messi and Ronaldo be posting next week. That's at Check Junior Paul. Thank you so much, Check, for dedicating the time to be with us on this broadcast this early evening / night, depending on where you join us from, in as far as this debate is concerned. So thank you so much for chipping in. Much appreciated. So Adam Watton will be one of those other players that I would look to add to this list. I don't know how many does that make it. We've added. Yes, Kenya. Yes, you're from Kenya. Is it from Nyanza province, or was it Nyanza? No, or Machakos. I can't exactly remember the county that you mentioned where you're from, but I do remember vividly that you're from Kenya. So we will add Adam Watton to that list. Then the other player that I want us to add to this list is going to be, his name is skipping my mind. His name is skipping my mind. Is what's his full name? Adams something from Tyler Adams. Yes, Tyler Adams from Bournemouth. Now, Bournemouth have been one of the best teams in the Premier League so far. Nyanza, but now at Nairobi. Okay, yes, you see, I got it right. Nyanza. You originally said you are from Nyanza, Kenya. Now you say you're in the capital, Nairobi. I hope Nairobi is good. So, but thank you so much for being part of today's broadcast. Yes, I wanted to add Tyler Adams. Tyler Adams from Bournemouth. Bournemouth, I remember they're fourth in the Premier League. They've had a very, very brilliant start to the campaign. They've had 3 victories so far. So no, they've won 4 games so far this season. I think had about 3 draws and 1 loss so far this campaign, and they've been Tyler Adams has been one of those exciting midfielders that there has been in the Premier League so far this season. So yeah, in that regard. So for me, those would be the best central midfielders in the Premier League at the moment. Now, in my individual ranking, and this is what I would go with. Now, this is my ranking in terms of order. Number 1, I'll go with Declan Rice. While some may differ or will have a difference of opinion, for me, what puts him at number 1 is his flexibility or dynamism. That today is deployed as a number 6, tomorrow is a number 8. He starts a game as a number 8, completes as a number 6. The way they do their they interchangeably deploy themselves in that role with Martin Zubimendi has been so far exciting to watch. When one goes forward, the other stays, and things like that. Brilliant. So for me, I'll go with Declan Rice at number 1. Number 2, I'll go with Moises Caicedo at Chelsea. I mean, when he stamps his name on that midfield, you will hardly have a sniff. You'll had a sniff. He will intercept literally every ball that can be intercepted, and yet still spare a moment to go forward and score you a brilliant goal, which does not come every day or very often, but once in a while he's going to give it to you. So I'll go with him in number 2, Moises Caicedo. In number 3, I'm going to go with Sandro Tonali from Newcastle. I think he's that brilliant a player. He's that brilliant player. Then in number 4, I'll go now. Guys, I'm excluding Rodri from these rankings, even though we've sort of mentioned him. But because for purposes of this season, I don't think he's played enough games, really. He's been in and out of the team with injury setbacks, so we won't rank him. But he will be within the top 10, of course. So in number 4, I'm going to go with Martin Zubimendi. And the reason as why I put him ahead of whoever else you may have to think about is how well he's adapted himself to the Premier League, yet coming in, we all had our reservations, predominantly stemming from his lack, from our perceived lack of physicality on his game. And yet he's shown us that he can compete in physical duels, even against the strongest sides. So for me, that puts him at number 4. At number 5, I'm going to go with Enzo Fernandez. No. At number 5, I'm going to go with Joao Paulinho. Number 5, I'll go with Joao Paulinho at Tottenham Hotspurs. Been brilliant. At number 6, I'll go with Enzo Fernandez. At number 7, I'll go with Bruno Guimaraes. At number 8, I'll go with Adam Wharton. At number 9, I'll go with Jolinton. And at number 10, I'll go with Tyler Adams. Best on form so far this season. That's how I would rank them. So, in my view, they've been really, really, really brilliant. Do let me know if you have a divergent view or divergent thoughts in comparison to what we've discussed or what I've given you. Excuse me, because it would be really, really very exciting for me to hear from you, to know from you what your views are in regards to who you think is the best midfielder in the Premier League at the moment or so far. Your top 10, your top 5, your top 3, your top 6, whichever count you may want to make. But for me, that will be my list of the top midfielders from the Premier League this season so far. LFC, it's been a pleasure doing this with you. Thank you so much for alerting us to our lack of audio in the very opening seconds of this broadcast. You had promised to be back in 25 minutes, but I don't know what happened to the eggs you are cooking. It's been 52 minutes in this broadcast, and that means you've been roughly absent for about 48 minutes or thereabout. So I don't know what happened to the eggs you went to prepare, or you prepared and sat for dinner and never got the chance to return back. But it's all good. Shumail 7 Yellow, thank you so much for chipping in today's podcast. It's been a minute since I'd last seen you here with us. Same applies for Chen Paul from Kenya. It's been a pleasure having you around. I wish to say thank you to all our new subscribers on the channel. Thank you so much for joining the Football Tribe UG community. I can see we are at about 77 subscribers away from making 2,000 subscribers. And remember, that's the objective in the interim, to make it to 77 subscribers. Please go ahead and watch our content. Please go to the channel under the video section. We'll put out, some good content. We've premiered about 4 videos in the space of 1 week now. In the space of the last 8 days or so. Liverpool, a team in crisis. That was before they even played Chelsea. We talk about, can Arsenal stand the pressure of being top of the Premier League? Go watch that video as well. Then Oliver Glasner wants the Manchester United job. Of course, all that was washed down by by Sir Jim Ratcliffe saying Ruben Amorim won't be shown the exit, that they would want to give him at least 3 years for him to prove himself that he's a good manager. Then the English media and their Declan Rice captaincy narrative, we talk about that. And among other things, of course, for those of you that watch our live broadcasts long after they've ended, we do not take your love and support for granted. We do appreciate you a great deal. So thank you so much for always sparing the time to be with us and watch our content. It's been a pleasure doing this with you guys. It's about 55 minutes into the broadcast. That's awesome. It's almost a quarter past the hour of 10 p.m. Allow me to wish you a blessed night, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye for now.